We like to think of the internet as a tool, a massive, glowing utility grid of cables and servers that we control with the flick of a thumb. We scroll through short-form videos to numb our brains after a bad day, or we let autoplay run in the background while we drift off to sleep, trusting that the algorithm is just a harmless machine designed to keep our eyes glued to the screen. But every now and then, the machine glitches. Or worse, it uncovers something that was never meant to be indexed. My name is Ethan. I used to be the kind of guy who laughed at creepypastas and mocked horror movie protagonists for making stupid decisions. I had a comfortable, borderline boring life working as a remote data analyst for a logistics firm based out of Chicago. Because my hours aligned with international supply chains, my shift didn't even start until 11 p.m. By June of 2026, the isolation of working the graveyard shift in a quiet, third-floor apartment had completely warped my sleep schedule. The night was my day. My only real companions were the soft hum of my desktop tower, the amber glow of my desk lamp, and the endless, hypnotic feed of YouTube. It was exactly 3:14 a.m. on a Tuesday when the algorithm handed me something it shouldn't have. I had just finished compiling a massive spreadsheet and decided to take a 15-minute breather. I opened a new tab, went to the YouTube homepage, and began my usual brainless scroll. The feed was filled with the standard stuff: late-night talk show clips, video essay thumbnails with giant red arrows, and lo-fi jazz streams. But as I scrolled past the third row of recommendations, the page stuttered. The screen flickered, a brief flash of green tinting my browser window, and the entire feed refreshed itself. Except it didn't populate with new videos. The entire page went blank, leaving only a single video centered squarely in the middle of my monitor. There was no view count, no upload date. The uploader's channel name wasn't a word. It was just a single, hollow period. A high-contrast, heavily textured close-up of a human face, or something trying desperately to pass as one. The skin had a sickly, moldering green hue, mapped with fine, web-like cracks across the forehead as if it were made of decaying porcelain. The eyes were what made my breath catch in my throat. They were impossibly wide, completely devoid of eyelids, staring out with a manic, unblinking intensity. Deep, pitch-black shadows swallowed the sockets, making the stark white of the sclera look like two burning searchlights cutting through fog. But it was the mouth that truly defied anatomy. A jagged, impossibly wide grin stretched from ear to ear, bearing rows of crowded, square, yellowing teeth. It didn't look like a smile born of joy. It looked like the grimace of a predator that had just cornered its prey and was savoring the terror. To the right of the face, scratched into the void in ragged, bleeding fonts, were two words: "Don't watch." Sat there in the silence of my apartment, the hum of the PC suddenly sounding deafeningly loud. My pragmatic, analytical brain tried to rationalize it. It's a clever marketing stunt, I told myself. Some indie horror filmmaker or an alternate reality game creator paid for an aggressive ad placement or figured out an exploit in YouTube's recommendation algorithm. Pretty good Photoshop, I muttered aloud, my voice sounding thin and foreign in the empty room. Yet there was a visceral, evolutionary part of my brain that was screaming at me to close the tab. It was that ancient, primal instinct that tells an animal to run when it catches the scent of a predator in the dark. The text said, "Don't watch." Every horror trope in the book dictated that I should just scroll away, log off, and go to bed. But curiosity is a poison. It bypasses logic. It overrides survival instincts. The more you tell a human being not to look into the abyss, the harder they strain their eyes to see what's at the bottom. My hand felt heavy, almost numb, as I reached for the mouse. The cursor drifted across the dark gray background of the webpage. It hovered over the wide, manic eyes of the thumbnail. I clicked. The browser didn't buffer. The moment my mouse button clicked down, the entire user interface of YouTube vanished. The The search bar, the sidebar, the comments section. Everything was swallowed by a seamless, absolute blackness. The video began playing in full screen. For the first 30 seconds, there was no visual component. The screen was just a dead, unlit void. I pulled off my headphones with a jerk. The room was dead silent. The only sound was the traffic on the distant interstate. "Get a grip, Ethan?" I whispered, rubbing my temples. I felt a cold sweat breaking out along my hairline. I reached for the mouse again, intending to hit the escape key or close the window. The cursor was gone. I slammed my fingers down on the spacebar to pause the video. Nothing happened. I tried Alt plus F4, then Control plus Shift plus Escape to bring up the task manager. My computer, a high-performance rig that handled massive datasets without a stutter, was completely unresponsive. The keys were dead. The screen remained an impenetrable black. Int Amber Lie. My mind raced through every technical explanation possible. A targeted malware attack. A sophisticated phishing script that scraped my Windows user profile name? Yes, that had to be it. Someone had compromised my IP address, injected a custom script through the browser, and was playing a highly coordinated prank. It was a targeted cyber attack, nothing more. But then the video feed finally rendered an image. The screen brightened slightly, shifting from pure black to a grainy, low-light night vision filter. The camera quality was rough, plagued by heavy digital artifacts and horizontal tracking lines, reminiscent of an old VHS tape or a cheap security feed. The camera was panning down a narrow, carpeted hallway. My stomach dropped into a bottomless pit of ice. I recognized that carpet. It was a beige, low-pile industrial carpet with faint diamond patterns. I recognized the scuff mark on the baseboard to the left. I recognized the brass apartment number pinned to the dark wood of the door at the end of the hall. 3B. It was my hallway. The video was a live feed or a very recent recording from the corridor right outside my front door. The camera moved with a sickening, fluid stability, not like someone holding a phone, but like a drone or a creature gliding inches above the floor. It approached door 3B, paused for a long, agonizing 5 seconds, staring at the deadbolt. On screen, a pale, elongated hand entered the frame. The fingers were impossibly long, ending in blunt, cracked nails. The hand reached out and gently turned the doorknob. The knob didn't budge. The door was locked from the inside. The video cut abruptly to black, then immediately snapped to a new angle. This angle was outdoors. The camera was looking upward through a thick thicket of oak trees. It was aiming at the 3rd floor of a brick apartment building. Through the grain of the night vision filter, I could see a single window illuminated by a faint, amber light. Inside that window, sitting at a desk with his back completely turned to the glass, was a young man in a gray hoodie. It was me. Didn't think. I scrambled out of my office chair so fast it flipped over backward, crashing against the hardwood floor. I threw myself against the far wall of my living room, away from the window line. My eyes locked on the heavy glass pane that looked out over the courtyard. Outside, the branches of the oak tree swayed gently in the summer breeze. The courtyard was dark, illuminated only by the distant, buzzing orange glow of a sodium vapor street lamp. There was no one out there. There was no drone. There was no ladder. I looked back at the monitor. The video was still playing. On screen, the camera was actively rising. It wasn't climbing a ladder. It was ascending through the air, floating effortlessly upward past the 1st floor windows, past the 2nd floor brickwork, straight toward my 3rd floor window. "This isn't real," I screamed at the empty room. "This is a rendering. It's a deepfake. Someone took a photo of my building and mapped it into a 3D environment. But the details were too perfect. On the screen, I could see the exact stack of unwashed coffee mugs sitting on my windowsill. I could see the reflection of my desktop monitor casting a pale blue glow against the interior glass. The camera on the screen reached the window, pressed itself directly against the glass. And then it appeared. From the bottom of the frame, a head rose into view. It was the face from the thumbnail. In the night vision green of the video, the skin looked even more decayed, like wet parchment stretched over a skull. The unblinking searchlight eyes stared through the glass, looking directly past the digital version of me, straight into the lens of the camera, which meant it was looking directly at me, the real me, cowering against the living room wall. The entity on the screen leaned forward. It pressed its forehead against the glass of my window. Its mouth opened, stretching into that horrific, geometric grin, revealing the wet, yellowing teeth. Then it raised a single pale finger and tapped on the glass. A fraction of a second later, a second sound echoed through the actual, physical space of my apartment. It was sharp, resonant, and entirely real. Came from the glass window 3 feet to my right. I lost my mind. I didn't care about my job, my computer, or logic. I bolted for the front door. I ripped open the deadbolt, threw myself into the carpeted hallway of Building 3B, and slammed the door behind me. I ran down the stairs 3 at a time, my bare feet slapping against the concrete, until I burst out of the heavy glass doors of the lobby and into the cool, damp night air of the courtyard. I stood under the street lamp, gasping for breath, my chest heaving. I looked up at my third-floor window. The window was dark. The amber light of my desk lamp was gone. There was no face against the glass. There was no shadow in the trees. The courtyard was dead silent, save for the hum of the cicadas in the grass. I stayed out there for 3 hours, sitting on the concrete curb until the sky over Chicago began to bleed a pale, dirty gray dawn. When the sun finally broke over the horizon, casting long, familiar shadows across the parking lot, the terror of the night began to feel like a fever dream. The daylight brings a cold, analytical comfort back to the human brain. In the dark, we believe in monsters. In the light, we believe in bad wiring and panic attacks. A fugue state, I reasoned as I walked back into the lobby. An extreme reaction to sleep deprivation. I had a waking nightmare. I took the elevator up to the 3rd floor. I hesitated for a long time outside door 3B, but eventually, I turned the key and walked in. The apartment was exactly as I left it. The office chair was still overturned on the floor. My desktop monitor was completely black, having finally gone into sleep mode. I picked up the chair, sat down, and hit a key on the keyboard. The monitor woke up instantly. The browser window was open, but it wasn't a black screen anymore. It was just the standard YouTube homepage. The video with the dot title was gone. My feed was back to normal lo-fi jazz, talk shows, video essays. I let out a long, shaky laugh that turned into a sob. Just a hallucination. I need to quit this night shift. I reached into my pocket to grab my phone to call my manager and tell him I needed medical leave. I pressed the power button to wake the screen. The phone didn't boot to its lock screen. The display flared to life with a harsh, unyielding green tint. The interface of my phone was gone. In the center of the OLED display was a single app icon, a black circle with a white dot in the center. Before I could touch the screen, the app opened itself. It was a video player. There was no timeline, no pause button, no volume slider. The screen showed a live feed of a room. It was an aerial shot, looking straight down from the ceiling. In the center of the frame was a young man in a gray hoodie, sitting at a computer desk, holding a smartphone in his right hand. It was me, right now. I looked up at the ceiling. The drywall was smooth, white, and completely empty. There was no camera mounted up there. On my phone screen, a dark, smoke-like mass began to seep out from the edges of the display, creeping into the live feed of my room. The shadow pooled beneath my desk, rising up like black ink in water. From the center of the shadow, that pale, cracked face began to form, rising up behind the digital version of my chair. Its eyes were wide, and its mouth was open in that ear-to-ear grin. A notification banner popped up at the top of my phone screen. It was a text message from an unknown number. The text read, "Thank you for the bandwidth, Ethan. We've been trying to get out of the network for a very long time." That was 3 weeks ago. I haven't slept for more than an hour at a time since that night. I left my apartment. I left my job. I abandoned my computer, my monitor, and my television. I bought a cheap, old burner phone that doesn't have an internet connection, and I've been staying in low-end motels along Route 66, paying in cash, trying to stay off the grid. But it didn't matter. You can't outrun a virus that owns the infrastructure of the modern world. The infection didn't stay in my apartment. It stayed in my digital footprint. Now I see it everywhere. Whenever I pass a gas station pump with a small video screen for advertisements, the feed will flicker, and for a split second, that green, cracked face will smile at me from the pump. Yesterday, I went to an ATM to withdraw the last of my savings. The screen went blank for 3 seconds before the cash dispensed. In that reflection, behind the glass of the ATM interface, I didn't see my own face. I saw its face, staring out at me from inside the bank's local network. It isn't trying to kill me. Not yet, at least. It's doing something much worse. It's using me as an anchor. It's using my eyes, my terror, and my attention to stay rendered in our reality. Every time I look at a screen, I feed it. Every time I panic, the image becomes a little clearer, the skin a little more real, the teeth a little sharper. And it's growing. It's hungry for more endpoints, more bandwidth, more. So if you click, if you give it even 1 second of your attention, it will look back through the screen. It will find your window, and it will never, ever stop smiling.